Get started. Good morning, everyone. I am Matt Gishard. I'm chair of the Civic Affairs Committee for the Walnut Creek Chamber of Commerce and Visitors Bureau. And today our forum is entitled Its Value for Our Region, the Shadelands. I think it's important. I always call it kind of a hidden gem, and today is particularly apropos to talk about that hidden gem. The forum is presented by Wells Fargo, and thank you very much to Wells Fargo Bank. We're featuring Andrew Thibault. He's the senior principal of EMC Research, and he's going to present the results of a research project to advise the Shadelands property owners business improvement district on creating a new brand to help build a dynamic business and lifestyle destination. You should all know about EMC because they did work for the city on your parks, your future, Measure O, those kinds of things. So we're very familiar with them. We're very pleased to have Andrew here. Again, a special thanks to Wells Fargo Bank. As you know, the Civic Affairs are monthly forums, and really it's a free session, and we focus on matters of economic development as well as state and local topics. I want to give a special thanks to, obviously, our CEO, Bob Lynchide, and Jared Ash for helping me prepare for this. And also, of course, we have Angela Ashley on, and she is the liaison, the chamber, to our relationship with, of course, the Shadelands. So I do want to remind everyone to, if you have questions, put them in the chat. We're limited here to an hour this morning, and we're hoping we can get all the answers answered. I think it's very important. People need to get lots and lots of information that I think is important. I'm going to talk a little longer than I normally do before sending it over to Andrew. And I just want to say that the study, this Shadelands study that Andrew is going to talk about, was sponsored by the Shadelands PBID. And that's a group of businesses in the Shadelands that come together and pool resources to improve the area as a whole. The Shadelands area is the area between, so picture Ignacio Valley Road, the Canal Trail on the other side, Oak Grove, and Lennon Lane, including major streets, Shadelands, Mitchell, and Wiggett. The Shadelands includes the Sports Mall, Senior Living, the Orchard Shopping Center, medical like Bass, Kaiser, UCSF, John Muir, and dozens of office buildings and daycare centers. As part of the Shadelands implementation plan, they are working to create a new brand, marketing, and business attraction strategies. And the public opinion polls we're about to hear about are part of the effort to create a new brand and evolve the Shadelands. So let's have a little shout out to Andrew and we're so interested in the poll. And then I'll say at the end of Andrew's discussion, we're going to call on Calvin Jung of Creative Mint to talk about, okay, where do we go from here? So anyway, Andrew, if you tell us a little bit about yourself and about your company, and then let's get right into that poll.
Sure. Well, good morning, everyone. I'm Andrew Thibault. As Matt said, I'm a senior principal with EMC Research. We're a national public opinion research firm that's been in business since 1989, actually started in Berkeley and Seattle. One of our founding partners, many of you may know, no longer with the company, but still an influence on all of us, Alex Evans, who lives over in the East Bay. I'm actually up in Seattle, but I have family in Lafayette and Orinda, very familiar with the area, spent a lot of time down there. I've been doing this for over 30 years, even though I'm only in my mid-20s. And we do a lot of brand research, very similar to this, but we do all types of public opinion research across the country. On my team with me today is Andrew Bishop. He's the one who does most of the work that I'll be taking credit for this morning. We're going to be talking about two surveys here. The first, we're just going to go through the highlights, and that was a survey that was just a web survey, but we used the event, we organized it around Made in the Shade to try to drive people to complete it. But we also used a variety of other channels, lists that businesses had, chamber lists. So it is more of a self-selected sample. So we can't say that it's representative of the resident population, but there's some interesting insight from people who have a little more connection with Shadelands in some way. And then the second part, and what we're going to really focus on here today, is the residents survey, because that is statistically projectable to the larger resident population. As Matt said, the focus of this was in support of a rebranding effort to understand how residents and visitors currently think of the Shadelands, what its kind of brand image is, and what type of things they're looking for, what would draw them to the destination more often. And also, we've talked about this concept of getting people to link up trips, so not just coming for one specific task and then leaving, but doing multiple things at the destination. So I'm going to share my screen and jump in here, do the obligatory. Can we see the title slide? Okay, I see some heads nodding, so I'm just jumping in.
Yes.
Starting with that kind of more directed survey. So that was a static web survey of community members and visitors through various lists of contact lists, existing contact lists. That was up for almost a month. So we program a web survey with all these questions, and then we drive people to that survey using a link. And we finished 480 interviews total. It was initially distributed at Made in the Shade, and then we added a bunch of other methods to recruit people to get our number of completes up, including through the city, the chamber, and other community channels. So again, it's a self-selected sample. It's not a true random sample. So starting at the end, the key findings. Not surprisingly, this group had a high awareness of Shadelands, including nearly 7 in 10 who visit the area more than monthly. This group already had a connection, so keep that in mind as you're hearing these results. Perceptions are broadly positive, but the most frequent destination is Safeway and the medical and athletic facilities. Those are really the ones that stand out. And it's important to understand, we'll see this more in the resident survey, what are existing perceptions, so we know what we're working with when we're talking about a rebrand. And one of the things we found in both of these studies is perceptions are much more narrower than Shadelands, the place actually is itself. There's a lot more going on there than even people with a connection realize. The top words and phrases used to describe Shadelands are related to it being an office park, and around half agree that the park is mostly outdated office buildings. So, if you think about trying to get people to show up for a whole variety of activities, that brand image, is a little outdated. We're looking for something that will inspire interest and passion. Office park doesn't typically do that. Aside from daily visitors, most consider Shadelands to be suited for a single trip. So rather than multiple, they're not linking up trips. So they're coming to the sports facility, or they're coming for a medical appointment, or they're coming to Safeway to shop, but they're not doing multiple things. Current barriers to visitation include distance and accessibility, as well as lack of relevant amenities. That lack of, I would add a word there, perceived lack of relevant amenities. There are lots of amenities that are there that people are not aware of because of what the image, the current brand image is. Dining and retail, there's already dining and retail there. People would like to see more dining in retail. And then real quick, we're just going to look at the profile of respondents just to show you this is not a representative sample. These are people with some connection to Shadelands, either through a medical facility, through the chamber, through the city, or having visited Made in the Shade. It was heavily female. Almost 4 in 10 had children at home. And if you think about the event, that makes sense. Geographically, half of the people we talked to in this initial research were from Walnut Creek. Then you see distributed across other areas, the next highest being Concord at roughly 1 in 5. Moving into the resident survey. So this is the one that we're really focusing on. I would say this first survey was more about kind of fleshing out this survey with maybe a bit more aware audience. So the resident survey is statistically projectable. It's a multimodal survey. What that means is, in addition to phone, we do email and text to web. We do all three modes to get a representative sample. You can't get young people on the phone today, and so email and text to web are critical. We focused on Walnut Creek, Concord, Pleasant Hill, and Lafayette. So we kind of drew a boundary around Shadelands, and it's not a precise boundary in terms of miles, but we looked at those 4 cities. The survey was conducted at the end of August. We did 400 total interviews. So now this is statistically projectable to the adult resident population in those 4 cities. The results are proportional to those geographies. So if you look at how this breaks down, 60% of our interviews were in Walnut Creek, 20% in Concord, 10% in Pleasant Hill, and 10% in Lafayette. So we wanted to focus more closer in, but also get some interviews as we move out. This is not going to be comprehensive in that it catches it's not going to catch everyone who comes to the Shadelands, because some people travel much further for specific services and amenities like medical and sports. So we didn't want to go so wide that we were getting a large population that was unfamiliar. So this was the compromise. You can see lower percentage of children at home because this is a representative population, more balanced in terms of gender and age. And then we'll get into, most are driving. We'll get into visitation a little bit more detail as I go through the findings and the data. So awareness is very high among the adult resident population in these 4 cities, and most who are familiar with Shadelands have a favorable opinion of it. So the brand doesn't have any significant overall negativity associated with it, which is good because we don't have to work again, to correct that. But despite that high awareness and strong favorable rating, a majority visit less than once a month. So they like it. They don't love it enough to come more often than that. And so that element of passion and interest, beyond just task-oriented visits, isn't there. And that's what we'll be trying to build with the rebrand. The top descriptors center around its medical facilities and office space. The most frequently mentioned reasons for visiting are the medical facilities, grocery shopping, and dining. We did a paragraph description of Shadelands that just talked about, the extent of it, both in geographic extent and the amenities that are available. 90% of these folks, and remember, 84% told us they were already familiar with Shadelands. But this description, 90% responded favorably to that description, which I'll get to. And 2/3 say they are more likely to visit based on the description. We asked them what they were most surprised about, and it was the variety of amenities offered. So the existing brand isn't even consistent with the existing amenities, right? And what's available there, but lots of opportunity. Participants expressed interest in a wide range of potential amenities, including restaurants, exercise facilities and gyms, shopping, and improved transportation infrastructure. When we talked about potential new amenities, expanded amenities, that resulted in people saying they were more likely to visit, hearing that those might be coming online. So a lot of opportunity here. We started asking people about visiting Walnut Creek, and this is just of those people who do not live in Walnut Creek. So how often do you visit Walnut Creek for non-work activities? And you see nearly 1 in 3 of our respondents who live outside of Walnut Creek say they visit at least weekly. So right here, almost every day or several times a week. And we wanted to ask this first and then move into asking it about Shadelands specifically. So keep these numbers in mind and kind of this progression here. What are the top reasons you visit Walnut Creek? Again, just residents outside of Walnut Creek, and it's shopping and groceries and dining top the list. This is asked of everyone. How familiar are you with Shadelands Walnut Creek? 84% said they were very or somewhat familiar. Only 15% down here saying not that familiar or not at all familiar. of those 84% who were familiar, most have a favorable opinion. But what's important here is there's not a lot of intensity. Most of that is somewhat favorable. It's not strongly favorable. And strongly favorable attitudes are really what puts that a destination like Shadelands top of mind when people are thinking about going out to eat or shopping or something like that. So we would really want to see, as we're rebranding and down the road, this intensity here become a bigger share of this favorable rating. The good news is there's really no strongly unfavorable. So it's not that there are negative attitudes. It's just they're more kind of in the middle there. We asked people, based on what you know or have heard, what words or phrases would you use to describe Shadelands? Walnut Creek, again, jumping back here, this is just of the people who were familiar. So you can think of this as the brand image. So the favorable is the overall brand strength, brand rating. These are the words and phrases that people associate with the brand Shadelands Walnut Creek. And you can see related to medical, that's the top answer. 22% mentioned something related to that. Then business, professional, jobs, offices, 16%. So a jobs center. But this is really the first kind of more, I don't know what the right word here is, kind of, but like an emotional kind of connection here. Safe, good area, nice area, quiet. But the rest of the stuff is kind of much more generic and kind of much more in line with this idea of somewhat favorable and not strongly favorable. How often do you visit Shadelands Walnut Creek for any reason? And this is just the people who are familiar. So you remember we had 3 in 10 visiting Walnut Creek at least several times a week. Here it's only 1 in 10. And then another 28% several times a month. But you see a majority are only visiting a few times a year or never, a few times a year or less. So, you know, the other goal here is to shift this so the bars over here are taller. We asked people to tell us all the reasons that they visit Shadelands, and they could select more than one, so this will add up to over 100. But as with kind of the brand elements, the brand image, the top mention of reasons for visiting is something around medical facilities. So almost half mentioned that, a third Safeway, a third dining and breweries, then dropping off 1 in 5 to public events, 14%, the sports mall. And remember, when you're thinking about who actually visits, when you're thinking about something like the sports mall and why isn't this higher, you know, people are coming from much further out for the sports mall because it's a very dedicated kind of specific activity and facility. And so, you know, we obviously aren't capturing all of those people. I don't think it's any surprise that salons and other beauty parlors is at 6%. That's a more niche audience. But you can see medical and Safeway really at the top here. So this is the description, and this is, to me, the most interesting and important question in this entire survey. So we asked these people, remember, 80+% were already familiar with Shadelands. We read them this basic description about it being a 270-acre property. And we talked about the things. So we said, in addition to being a key jobs and employment center, we talked about restaurants, bars, outdoor dining, medical and health, retirement community, world-class fitness and athletic facilities, 7 acres of outdoor spaces, trails, community spaces, farmers market, outdoor art, gardens, and music. And so 90% favorable here. We weren't persuading. We didn't say you should come here because this and that is great. We just said, this is what it is. What do you think of that? Got an overwhelmingly favorable response. And I want to go back to, to this favorable here. Among those familiar, we had 29% strongly favorable, 64% somewhat. We do this basic description here. We get to almost half strongly favorable. It's evenly divided between strongly and somewhat. So you're getting that intensity that creates that connection to a place based on this description, and very few responding unfavorably. And again, this is people who already had a degree of familiarity with Shadelands, and this additional information about what's already there goes a long way towards shifting their attitudes. So we asked them, what surprised you the most about what you just read? Because surprise is a good hook to get people's attention. Lots of activities, so much I haven't seen, so much there, more than I thought. Those who have heard me do this presentation before will groan a little bit when I say this, but it reminds me of back in the day, the orange juice commercials, when they said it's not just for breakfast anymore, that people had this very narrow perception of what orange juice was. And expanding that perception created a huge opportunity for rebranding, because you were leveraging off what a misperception and correcting it in a really positive way, right? You're not saying, oh, you're wrong. You're saying, hey, there's a lot more here than you thought, right? The parks, trails, open space, like just mentioning all of these, the size is another code. So it's kind of just not the physical and the service breadth here. To get to that number favorable without any persuasion messaging, about how important it is to the community and jobs and the economy and all that is great news, because it means the hill that we're rolling this rebrand rock up is not as steep as it could have been. There's no negative there. So after seeing this description, how likely are you to visit Shadelands? And this is a 1 to 7, not at all likely to very likely. You see 68%, 2/3 saying they're likely to visit based on what they just heard. Only 16% saying not that likely. And those who said not that likely, it was really because it's too far out of the way. So it's, people in those 4 cities that are a little too much on the edge, and the traffic and what it would take to get them there is not something they're really interested in pursuing. And then the next one, no reason to go, nothing there I need, not interested, don't go out. Like, all of these top answers are things that we're not going to change, right? They're just factors of their situation. And so it's not like, oh, we need to tweak this to get there. There are some that, perceptions around safety, that's only 3% of this 16%. So that's probably one person, some things around traffic. But really, there isn't an obstacle here that needs to be worked on as part of this to be removed before we can get people more interested in coming and more likely to come. We read folks this list of amenities that could be added. We didn't talk about whether they were there or not, and said, how interested are you in each of these amenities, from not at all to very. Over here on the right, you can see the total, so above the midpoint, which is a 3. We also look at intensity, because an amenity that you're very interested in is more likely to get you there than one that you're just interested in. So if you look here, restaurants and bars, paths and walkways, small retail and independently owned shops, outdoor dining and picnic areas, all of these, a third or more very interested, a majority interested, all the way down to, we have some live performance and community events, and then cafes and coffee shops. All of those are majority interested. I also look at not at all interested, because you're starting to see, all right, this is really an amenity with more limited appeal. Those are play spaces and activities for kids. That's more about, not everybody has kids, so it appeals to a smaller audience. Free bike or scooter share networks, not everyone wants to get on a scooter. And then large retail is always less popular than small and independent owned businesses. And then again, salons and beauty parlors has a particular targeted audience, so a little lower there. But lots of interest and lots of different amenities and things that are already there, right? Are there other amenities? So we ask a catch-all question afterwards to see if there was anything we missed. There isn't really anything here of note in terms of percentage that's different from what was on this long list that we already had. So there wasn't any one single amenity that we left out that people were really saying, we need this, we want this. If these key amenities were available at Shadelands, how likely would you be to visit? So we did the favorable, right, the description of Shadelands as it is now. 68% said they were likely to visit based on just that description. And then when we lean in a little more on amenities and potential new amenities, you see we get up to 75% saying likely to visit. And you see the good news is all of that growth from just talking about the amenities again is in very likely to visit. So the highest they could rate it on the scale, that's what they rated it at. And that's a great number. So if you think about this, just this 40%, if those folks were more engaged in visiting, that would be a significant win. And, you know, there's also some percentage of these folks that are available with the right communications effort. And then the other one, you know, in brand research, I'm not a huge fan of jargon, but they call it, this is part of a net promoter. How likely would you be to recommend Shadelands to friends or family? So it's one thing to say, you know, this is good for myself, but am I going to take that extra step and say, hey, this is cool, you should check it out? And we did get 65%, nearly 2/3, saying they are likely to recommend to family and friends, 26% very likely. This last question that I'm going to talk about, it was just, you know, this is not a development survey by any stretch of the imagination. As everyone knows about every development project, the devil is always in the details. We just wanted to ask about these 1, 2, 3, 4 potential developments. And what we are really looking for here more than anything else is to say, out of the gate, just on the concept, are folks rejecting this idea out of hand? And so we pulled out the numbers for Walnut Creek here, but additional senior living centers. You see, we didn't give any details about size, number of units, or anything like that. So there's a really soft number, but 67% overall supported, 23% opposed. I look at strong opposed here to really see if it's a concept that people just are not digging. And you see really no difference here between overall and Walnut Creek. Apartments, condos, or townhomes, 51% support, a little bit lower. So it's +12 in the entire geographic area. It's +6 in Walnut Creek. But you know, the strong support is low, as is the strong opposition. A hotel for out-of-town visitors and event venue, really similar numbers, 51% support. Still not a ton of strong opposition for any of these. You know, developments tend to draw opposition no matter what. And then multi-use buildings, not on the main road, taller than 3 stories, but shorter than 7 stories. We're not talking anything about what the use would be for these buildings. And that's where you see more divided. And people in the middle here are saying, you know, I need more information to know whether I would support or oppose, you know, purpose and that. So that is my last slide. I'll pause and breathe.
Well, wonderful. I have to say, kind of things that I personally didn't know. You know, we use this term, and I used it today as Shadelands being the hidden gem, because in talking to friends and neighbors, many times people say, well, I do understand that there are medical facilities there, and that's why I go. But I think the perception of a lot of people is that big shopping area with Safeway, lots of restaurants, lots of things, people don't think of that, or haven't in the past, as part of Shadelands. Yeah. They think of more the business center and all that. And so the concept of asking these questions and letting people know, I want to ask the kind of the surprise, in fact, that, God, yeah, there are things there that I didn't know.
Yeah, and I want to answer Jonathan's question really quick. So wherever it's not the entire data set, that will be spelled out specifically, right? So so we did, the familiarity here was just among these folks, asked of those who are familiar. This one as well. Once we get outside of these, if there's no qualifier there, this is the whole sample set. So all 400. So just clarifying that.
Yeah, good. So I see that you're looking at the chat as well.
Yep.
Perfect. So instead of me repeating it to you, that's good. I see a couple more.
Yeah, and so I want to follow up on Laura's comment, because that kind of description, you know, data helps us intellectualize things. Stories help us connect with things. And I actually think testimonials like what Laura just typed in the chat can be very powerful in the rebranding effort. And, that's Calvin's specialty and he'll talk about it. But the surprise, the unexpected, and the story of the things that are there and the connection to those things among people who know about them can be a really powerful tool.
Yeah. Andrew, could you actually, when there's a chat, if you're going to read it, let the audience, because some people aren't looking at that.
Yeah. Well, Laura just had a nice comment about everything that's there and that it being a gem. Yeah, that's most of the comments are about that. So the data question was, are the charts there referencing the whole survey population or just a subset? And that's why I explained it's called out where it's just a subset of the overall data.
Good. I'm going to ask, there's there are a couple more that will have you. You were talking, you used the word obstacles at one point. Some of the obstacles people have talked about is that issue of sidewalks, of various moving around within the shadelands, and that's kind of something. Is there something you can remark on that?
Yeah, that certainly was mentioned, but that's kind of, to me, like the next problem or the problem after. The main problem here is the way people perceive this hidden gem, as you've talked about it, doesn't line up with what's there, right? It's a very stale image. Medical buildings, office park, outdated office buildings, and that's not the truth of it. And so to me, that is step one, maybe step two as well. And then you start to get into people who do want to go there and are coming there, what are the challenges they're facing? The one thing, Matt, that we saw in the people who did not say they were more likely to visit, those things were about being too far away or, not needing any of the services or things that were there. And so part of what I was saying about that is those are things that are not under anyone on this call's control and not things to focus on. There's a really big chunk of residents here who are reachable, right? And want to hear about the exciting things that are going on there and then the new things that will be coming.
Mm-hmm. And, an interesting thing is, of course, when you're talking about separating out, these are Walnut Creek residents, and then these are residents. And looking at those numbers, the residents from other cities actually come to Walnut Creek. They come downtown, they come to retail, they come to dining and all that. And you think to yourself that, well, what's the difference coming down Oak Grove Road from Concord and right past the Shadelands to downtown, or coming out Ignacio or whatever? You kind of think that, I suppose part of the rebranding is this easily as accessible as anything else, and certainly as attractive as anywhere else in the city. I don't want to fight with the downtown a little bit, but yeah, there is a competition, which is interesting to me. But your numbers seem to show that there isn't that much difference in people who visit Walnut Creek between Walnut Creek residents and people that are not residents with respect to the Shadelands.
Yeah,
is that right?
Yeah, and yes, that's accurate. And so Blair had a question about this slide and restaurant dining / fast food. So I want to point out that, and I should have said this when I was initially going through this data. These are the categories that we actually read to people or they saw when they were doing the online survey. So they had this exact text here and they said, I'm interested in sit down restaurants and bars. Then we did what is called an open-end question. So we just either on the phone, we said to them, or online, the question was, are there any other amenities or services you would like to see at Shadelands? And they typed it into a text box, whatever their answer was, or they said it on the phone and we typed it in, and then we aggregated into larger categories. So these aren't categories that we offered, but all this means is people said something food related, 2 or 3 of them might have been fast food. This wasn't a category we provided. And none of these things are really different than this list here. So I wouldn't focus too much on that fast food.
I get it. Yeah.
Yeah.
So I'm going to kind of leave it to you a little bit, hang you out there a little bit to look at some of these comments because I see.
Unrealized. Ron's question, is there a way to measure the unrealized potential of the Shadelands for use in helping us know where to focus investment? So I'm not, I guess my question would be, with what audience? Are you talking about potential visitors, or maybe say a little bit more about that, Ron?
Well, I'm going to jump in a little bit to keep things moving along here, but with the ideas, we call it the hidden gem. And one of the things, there is so much out there. And it's interesting when you show, as you just mentioned, what are things you'd like to see? And it's amazing that there are a lot of those things already there that people are saying, I'd like to see there. And so the purpose of the rebrand is just comes and hits you right in the face. I mean, critical. And this whole concept of rebrand, certainly based on all the information that you have, is precisely provided for the purpose of the rebrand. I think it's one very positive.
Yeah, Matt, I mean, you could almost say, hey, you asked for it, we've got it, right? Like, it's already here. We did it. Yeah.
You know what I think we'll do is, I'm going to actually call on Calvin Young of Creative Mint and have him give, it's kind of a, okay, now we have this, so what's next? But Andrew, I want you to jump in also. So I think between the two of you, there are issues that may come up. So Calvin, first of all, Calvin, come in and tell us a little bit about what Creative Mint is and your role. And then let's talk about, okay, what do we do with all this? What do we do with this information?
Sure, absolutely. So Creative Mint has been, we just celebrated our 20th anniversary of Creative Mint. And we're a branding company foremost. People usually come to us when they don't know what to do with their company or how to say it, or they need a new name, or they want to change their name, basically start from scratch, or just tweak what they're doing. So I've been doing this for about 35 years myself. I came from the Interbrand Global Group. So we use a lot of that intellect and that kind of process for our own company, but modified because the world works faster today. As we know, we don't have 6 months to do a branding program anymore. You kind of have to do it much quicker. So Creative Mint was created to kind of make that a much more digestible process. We do a lot of hospitality, real estate, lifestyle brands. That's about 1/3 of our business. The other 1/3 is financial work with Fidelity and Schwab, Pershing, you name it. And the other 1/3 is technology. So we know the area very well. Just for those of you who don't know, I've had a house out here for 10 years. I'm 5 minutes away from Shadelands. So I know the area, I use it every day, and now I'm permanent. We've moved out here full time in the last 4 years. So, you know, I'm in and out of there. I pass it every day, 10 times, just like everyone else. So this project is very personal to me because I want the success to be so great because I'm one of the users and one of the visitors as well. So yes, so branding is critical in terms of finding a foundation that is not just for a pretty logo, tagline, and a website. It's trying to help everyone involved, including the developers, the managers, the businesses, focus on how to be cohesive together. So helping them make decisions as a whole, not as individuals. And that's usually where we see things not going smooth, is when everyone's making their own decisions in a project without any cohesive thought process. So how are we going to use this research? Clearly the research is good. So it's great that there's no negativities. I mean, one of the highlights that I thought was interesting was Cali Craft came up quite high up in the awareness. And I don't think a lot of people from outside know there is that type of business in there, but it shows that people want more of that type of thing. In terms of talking not fast food, they want more of these kind of craft experiences, these more unique experiences. You know, why downtown versus Shadelands? I think it's because we need to have something a little bit more special. So the brand starts with pointing out what we have, because that's the reality, right? We have to work with what we have, but then also suggest activations that will help development, create new things that will help improve what's going to happen there to keep building on where we all want to go. So with this research, the points discovered in this work will help us guide towards a focused approach for the brand. So you only have so much money, so much budget, so much time. We need to really focus on where the opportunities are and how do they align with the marketing committee's goals and desires for Shadelands too. So it's what does the team, the PBID, want to do? What are their goals? What does the city want to do? Like, what does everyone want to do? And then how does the research support that? From the research, it's clear that the education and awareness of the amenities is paramount to highlight for the brand campaign, the website. And we also have to define Shadelands' reason for being. Why Shadelands? Right now, it's just there. That's because there's kind of a lot of middle ground, no strong feeling. So we want to make sure that whatever we create, whatever we sell, whatever we talk about in terms of the messaging points, that we really define Shadelands' reason for being to build connection with the community. Therefore, they'll think about it. It'll be more top of mind. It'll be more special. It'll be more referred. So all these things have to build up. It's not going to happen tomorrow, but the first step is really setting that foundation for people to start thinking and what that brand promises. What can we deliver today without any changes? And then what can we deliver as things evolve, develop, change, and build? And so really that's what we're working on right now. The marketing committee has been meeting. We're going to meet again in November to go over the brand roadmap, which is putting this all, make sense of it. Then we're going to start on some real recommendations starting at the beginning of the year.
Yeah, that's wonderful. So I see how this all fits into that rebranding and all. One of the issues I suppose that comes up is rebranding and driving people to that. But also we have competing. We have right across the street on Ignatia. We have competing centers and all that. And it's interesting, kind of an analysis of how that impacts getting people to, instead of coming from this side of Ignatia, to cross the street and go into that. And there's somebody on our former chair, Ed Del Beccaro, is here, and he's involved in commercial real estate. And Ed, can you give us maybe a 2-minute little thought from you on the concept of Shadelands competing directly with other parks and other shopping centers in the general area?
Yes, I'll be brief. Just so for background, I've actually put a lot of tenants into the Shadelands Business Park over the last 40 years. And three quick points. The original Shadelands was a business park to be built by an interchange along a highway. So Shadelands was actually in the 1970s, 90% leased to major regional employers like UPS, Montgomery Wards, etc. When the highway was killed, it then developed its vacancy issue because it became a different kind of a business park. It became local regional as opposed to regional because it wasn't next to an interchange. So the Shadelands of today, that's been evolving, and your study is fantastic, by the way, talking about neighborhood needs, talking about retail and all that. But if I'm in Danville, the odds of me going to a restaurant in Shadelands, or if I'm in Pleasant Hill, are not that high. Okay, so we have to understand that all those downtowns are competing for the restaurant. So the restaurant trade tends to be local. Because of the access of business, you're not getting major regional business companies there. You're getting local radius companies there. Medical, on the other hand, is very regional, and people do drive all the way to Shadelands, whether to the various things. So for Shadelands to fill some of those spaces, it should look at how it competes with the local tenant profile and the neighborhood needs versus the regional. And regional needs such as the sports mall, such as medical, sports entertainment, medical are the ones that bring people from a 20-mile radius. But a restaurant is not going to get somebody from 20 miles just to drive to Shadelands. I'm not going to go to Safeway in Shadelands if I have a Safeway in Danville. So we just have to be conscious that there's restrictions on circles of demand.
All right, and thanks. And as long as we're asking from people who know what the heck's going on, our liaison and critically important Angela Ashley, who is our liaison to the Shadelands from the chamber, I'm sure has lots of thoughts about growth in the area. And so can you give us a little input from your perspective, Angela?
Yeah, sure, Matt. Thank you. And this study is so informative. Thank you to EMC for doing it. It's really interesting. The data is specific enough, I think, to help us with the rebrand and have really clear directives and goals. So for me, as chair of the PBID committee, it's very, very helpful. I think Calvin gave a great presentation last week at the Shadelands Steering Committee meeting. One thing that I've noticed, because I've been the chair for, I don't know, about 10 years, is that the way to enlighten people about Shadelands who otherwise wouldn't go there is to make it a designed destination. In other words, to give them a compelling reason to go and visit. And then once you're there, you know, you stumble on Calicraft, or you stumble on, you know, a yoga center or Crunch or whatever it is, Starbucks, whatever you find. But by design, if there's a compelling reason or a decided reason to go. So for me, of particular interest is the fact that people want music, events, entertainment, and things like that. That's a new genre for us. We have restaurants, we have breweries. People have often said we want like eating or dining facilities out there. They're there. You know, I think the people who say that maybe haven't been or explored it. But the entertainment and the music and things like that is a new genre for us. You know, the sports mall brought parents and kids, and now you see that steady drumbeat of traffic. The senior living facility brought seniors, and obviously the medical industry has brought patrons, workers, and patients. But this is an interesting outcome from the study from my perspective, and something new. So thank you for that.
Yeah, and so much was spot on in that comment. And you know, I think it was Calvin who came up with the idea of linking trips, right? When we were talking about this. And as you described, like at first it might be an ad hoc linking, like, oh, I didn't know this was here. Cool. And then it becomes more intentional down the road. And then you also set me up to say my Andrew B on our team will roll his eyes when I say that. But one of my favorite polling cliches is perception is reality. You have to operate in the environment of what people perceive to be the truth, right? And so, yes, you have restaurants and all those things, but if they perceive they're not really there, then that's the environment. They're not, right? It's a much easier task when they already are to say, hey, wait a minute, we're more than you thought. This is here too. But yeah, I see so much opportunity here.
Right. Another opportunity is linking the design destination. So if you have specials with restaurants or breweries that link to the events, that would be fantastic, because then people see an opportunity that they're willing to engage in. There's a compelling reason for that. So this is great news. Interesting, fascinating, actually. Yeah. We were just there last night with my law firm at Calicraft, and it was busy. There's a, it's steadier.
Yeah. People love it. Yeah, we do so much destination. So it's about driving people there for trial. And what's always common is you have to have something special. So it will help drive, what type of tenants do you want there? Certainly we have enough of the kind of generic things. So going back to restaurants, we have stuff that you're not going to drive that far. But if we got a tenant that had a really special concept, you would drive. Danville people would come up here, just like we go to Danville sometimes. It's not that far, but if you're looking for something special that's different, or a particular experience that you can only get at Shadelands, then people will come there. And that's what we focus on in terms of amenities for the hotels and the golf courses and all the things we work with. So this is no different. So it just helps us think a little bit sharper in terms of what is it that we want Shadelands to be, and who should be there, and what do they add to the reason for being. For us, a lot of it's about creating an energy and flipping it around, because right now it's really kind of quiet in terms of its belief or what people think about it. It's kind of neither here neither there, and we don't want that. That's not the brand we want. We want to create energy, we want need, we want reason, we want excitement, especially in the world that we live in today. you do have to provide things that people want to take a picture and show the world.
Yeah.
And that's free advertising if we can get people just there.
Yeah.
Yeah, so this will take time, of course, but again, brand is about guiding the future.
You know, that guiding, I'll say that we've used that. How do we get people there? And I think in the survey, talking a little bit about people, the issue of traffic and all that, people coming from distances and thinking. But I think a real elephant in the room, and something that people need to talk about and think about in this whole rebrand, is the perception that traffic on Ignacio is so terrible. And in some cases, it actually is. We talk about it for lots of issues in Walnut Creek. Treat on one side in Ignacio, that traffic. So how do we deal with that issue and the perception of all that traffic on Ignacio and driving people out to the Shadelands? And is that
I mean, I don't have anything data-based here, but just having done a lot of research over the years, like one of the critical things in communicating here is about being in the frame we want to be in, right? And that frame is everything Calvin's talking about: energy, excitement, something you want to take a photo of, and not saying things like, hey, the traffic isn't as bad as you think, right? We want them in a different mindset when they're thinking about this brand. That doesn't mean you don't address it in specific instances, but really you always want to be talking in a frame and a theme that gets people excited about the destination.
Yeah, you know, it's interesting because I'll have to say that's where I go for medical care. Oftentimes, my physical therapy just recently was in the Shadelands. My only concern about traffic on Ignacio was when my kids were going to be born, and we had to kind of plot it out coming from downtown Walnut Creek to John Muir, just because during traffic time. As luck would have it, of course, in both cases, it was highly, the traffic was 5 p.m. and all that. But in terms of Shadelands, I don't see that, at least from my own experience, going out to the IRS office or whatever. But you know, as you say, statistically, I think that is something in rebranding, is there is a perception that it's way out there and there's a lot of traffic. And I think that's part of the rebranding.
Yeah, I mean, anecdotes aren't data, but last night I sat in traffic to go downtown in Seattle for something I wanted to go do, right? Like I wanted to see it. It was something that was unique and engaging. And that's one way to fight the obstacle of traffic without doing anything about traffic. The more people want to go there, the more they're willing to put up with to get there. I also wanted to follow up on Angela's comment about maybe this business offers us something at this other business that connects. Like that's also an important part of this, fostering that sense of internal community, because that kind of creates a more cohesive community there that you're branding, right? And everybody trying to help link trips for other businesses there, right?
Mm-hmm.
Mm-hmm. Yeah,
absolutely.
Yeah, the part of, one of the things that's so strong and different about Shadelands is the park-like environment. And, there's been, someone mentioned, not all the roads are connected, all those type of things. But those are things that can be fixed. If we know that we want it all connected, that we want the pathways to be working as things get developed and improved, those are, those should be top of line so that we can connect it. So the low-hanging fruit is really the community right beside it. Like if they're using it more because they love it. And as we know, Walnut Creek is totally connected through all these pathways and bikeways and walkways. And Shadelands should be somewhere that you actually go through instead of pass by, because it's already somewhat connected in lots of ways. So I think all these things are part of the culture out here. So there's no reason why that can't be improved upon. So I think, again, these are all positives. It's already like halfway there, or if not more. It's how to get us over the hump and get all the way there.
Yeah,
and the traffic, Andrew kind of answered it, but I don't know if we can change that. It's like LA traffic, is that ever going to change? Or San Francisco traffic? It's whether we provide something that's worth it. Right. So especially with the twinning, we call it, where you get lots of things together and you're like, oh, we're going to go there. We're going to take the whole family. We'll do this. You do that. I'll drop you off there. If people are doing more than one thing, then the trip is actually way more worth it to them to sit in traffic, because they know when they get there, it's all going to be so fun and worth it to everybody in the family.
Yeah, and right now, if you say park in the context of Shadelands, people think office park,
Mhm.
not
Yeah.
green, but gray concrete, right?
Yeah. And it's not. That's the funny thing.
Right.
Compared to any other business park, it's super green and park-like.
Yeah,
I've never
Well,
seen another park that
yeah.
isn't just sidewalks and
Right.
parking lots.
And
Yeah.
it has a park. It has a children's area.
Yeah, it's very green with old redwood trees. It's amazing.
It is beautiful. I think another thing that would be great is if you're twinning or linking things, just to try to focus on more of the off-traffic hours. And then the first experience may be more pleasant. You know, so if people are going to a concert or whatever you plan at 6:30 or 7, that's going to be, well, or maybe 7, that's going to be a different experience going down Ignacio than 5 o'clock, you know, which we did yesterday, and it did take a very long time. But had we done it just half an hour later or whatever, it would have been a different experience, or in the middle of the day.
Well, I want to, we're getting right to the end here. We're going to wrap up. I do want to say, for those of you who haven't looked at all of the questions in the chat or the remarks, it's such an engaged group that we have here today, because we're seeing so many people saying, I go there for sports. I go there for these reasons. I live nearby. It's a wonderful place. I can't tell you the number of comments about the sports mall that people are coming from all over, Pleasant and everywhere, to go to that sports mall. So it is a great place. It's wonderful that we've gotten this information. Thank you very much, Andrew Thibault. Thank you, Calvin, for kind of giving us a little sense of what's going on. Thank you for everybody else who's weighed in on this. And I do want to say, this is not the end of this conversation. This is just a start for our civic affairs in our city of Walnut Creek. Thank you to everyone. Thanks for all the help. I'm going to kick it over to Bob, our president and CEO, to finish things off.
Thank you,
Yeah,
Matt.
thanks, Matt, and thanks everybody for attending. Let me first off thank members of the city council and city staff for being on this call today. Our conversations continue. There's a natural tie between the work that we're doing with the Visitor Bureau and the sports element and the Shadelands. Many of you know that Calvin and his firm did the rebrand to Visit Walnut Creek. And so we feel like we tapped a natural resource to bring these groups together. And ultimately, we'll see the outcome be real positive in that nature. So I wanted to acknowledge the city and the direction that we're going. Calvin did a great job of telling what the next steps are. We'll be keeping you all informed. This is being recorded, so if you mention it to somebody, hey, you really missed a forum that was talking about the next chapter of Shadelands, we're happy to share the link with you. So I want to thank Lynn, Pauline from my team for putting this ultimately together, and our marketing team, and our many board members that are in attendance, notwithstanding our board chair, Audrey G. So thanks, Matt, for doing this, and we'll be in touch with everybody. Take care.